you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am your host, Rich Barris. It's Wednesday, May 17th, so we are done with Kentucky primary night, and we're going to talk about the top winners and losers of primary night. Also, presidential polling, we started to go over it a little bit, but now that the primaries are over, primaries in Kentucky are over. We had a little test run, and we were able to see whether or not one polling universe is slightly closer than another. So I think that it's worth drilling down more on some of these presidential election numbers as we do. And then a third, of course, took me a little bit to get through the Durham report. I'm going to try to get some of our legal analysis friends on Friday to discuss it because I'm not a lawyer. But I will say this. Cognitive bias? Really? What the FBI did is cognitive bias, or is it corruption? And we're going to take a look at that question. All right, let's just get right into it. First, before we get into big winners and losers, let's go through the live results of Kentucky. We'll also talk about the Jacksonville mayoral race, which Republicans lost for the first time in more than a decade. A massive blow to a narrative, several massive blows to a certain narrative last night. I don't want to hear that it's Kentucky, it's red, it's Kentucky, it's Trump plus 26. I don't want to hear it. All right? The twisting, the turning, the spinning, the coping, I just don't want to hear it. All right? You're going to personally level attacks against people. You're damn sure going to realize when I'm going to call out when you were wrong. You're going to make these big, bold statements using what my professor said, remember Monday, historically inaccurate analogies. I'm going to call you out when you're wrong. And you are, in fact, wrong. Last night was a complete and total embarrassment for the mega donor, non-Trump wing, consultant class of the Republican Party. A complete and total endorsement. Here is the results. This is what Kentucky looks like now that we've had a couple hours to fill it in. We did do a live coverage event last night. And welcome to the new YouTube members who joined up to watch it. Good audience on YouTube yesterday for a paid per view, which is what it basically was. And then, of course, locals. It was on locals for local supporters. There is, if you're new to YouTube and you want to move over to locals, which is a more interactive platform, I do put out community tweets on YouTube, or community posts, but it's not as interactive as locals is. And we don't do as much as we do on YouTube as we do on locals. There is, look down, if you're a new member, there is a new YouTube member code for you if you want to switch over for locals. All right. This way you don't have to double pay. And many of you are double paying anyway, which I guess I should thank you for, but you don't have to. And the code is there. All right. All right. Wow. Wow. Not much to be said for the governor's election on the Democratic side, because as we know, Andy Beshear did not really have any significant primary challenge. And he was obviously favored to win. He is not only, again, I'm going to say this, Andy Beshear is not only a popular governor, period, in a red state. He's not only the most popular Democratic governor in a red state, he is the most popular governor nationwide, if you believe the Morning Consult poll. 60% approve of the job that Andy Beshear is doing as governor, which includes more than a quarter Republicans, and 34% disapprove. So whomever was going to be the eventual, inevitable Republican nominee was going to have a tall order on beating Andy Beshear. However, it is a Trump plus 26 state, and the exit interviews that I read from a lot of media outlets yesterday do seem to suggest that, maybe, and again, because gubernatorial elections are what kind of elections? Local elections. And they have how much predictive value with presidential elections? Zero predictive value with presidential elections, because what is not as strict as it is in a senatorial or presidential cycle? The partisan voting index of a state. The state's partisan lean is not as strict, is not as rigid when it comes to gubernatorial and local elections. All right. It's important you remember that, because there are a lot of people on there who's like, oh, well, yeah, whatever, it was expected Daniel Cameron was going to win. And no, it wasn't. That's an absolute lie. And it's not a shoo-in for Daniel Cameron or anyone who would have been nominated last night. Why are they saying that? They want to tee it up. If Daniel Cameron loses, they can blame Trump. It is not true that this will be an easy race, because it's a Trump plus 26 state for the Republican. This will be a very difficult race against a popular governor. That being said, you could have somebody like Phil Bradenson, super popular in Tennessee as governor, Democratic governor, gets his you-know-what kicked against Marsha Blackburn when he runs for Senate. Because we don't have to play the fill in the blank game from 30 seconds ago. I'm sure you remember, you're a smart audience. All right, so that's it. I mean, not much to be expected there. I will note the turnout difference. It was looking like Democrats were turning out at just as high as rates as Republicans were, and in the end, that's not true. There did turn out to be a lot more Republican votes. Republicans, about 33% higher, more than 33% higher than Democrats. But still, independents are very, very independent. And you could lose 20% of your own damn base. Ask Matt. All right. Andy Beshear beat him. If you don't remember, he was a Republican governor, a businessman, made some major mistakes, ended up losing, and it's been a difficult haul for Kentucky Republicans statewide ever since. Andy was a lockdown artist, however, when it came to the pandemic, and Daniel Cameron was clearly the best candidate to take him on, because Daniel Cameron was the attorney general who sued him successfully over and over and over again. It was unpopular to close those churches in Kentucky. They were very Stasi about it. There were many instances of just flat abuse of men of the cloth and clergymen. So he was obviously the best man to do it, but it will be difficult. All right, so Daniel Cameron wound up winning the Kentucky gubernatorial primary on the Republican side by almost as many votes as Andy Beshear won in almost an uncontested race. About 32,000 votes behind Andy Beshear. That's it. 47.67 or 47.7% to 21.7%. There was a lot of questions during the coverage last night about whether or not there were runoff. There used to be a runoff rule where you had to clear 40%. Obviously, Daniel Cameron cleared 40%, would have been all right. They scrapped that rule anyway years ago, which we discussed briefly. But Ryan Quarles, I think is actually how I pronounce it. And people were trying to correct me last night. And if I was wrong, sorry, but it is what it is. Great job mustering local support. He had 25 endorsements from state legislators. He had 250 local endorsements when you include supervisors, magistrates, and those legislators, state legislators, et cetera, et cetera. So his goal was to go after rural support as much as he could, even though Daniel Cameron had the Trump endorsement. Kelly Craft, the former UN ambassador and mega donor, GOP mega donor, all right, part of the consultant class, is the same team of advisors. And that's why you saw Alex Brusewich put up the meme of Jeff Rowe, last night. Same people who are running Ron DeSantis' campaign, same people who ran against J.D. Vance in Ohio, same people who ran against the MAGA candidates at the gubernatorial levels, at the senatorial levels, against Oz and Kate Burnett in Pennsylvania, on and on and on. It is the consultant class candidate. She's self-funded. She bombarded Daniel Cameron on the airwaves. 2 months ago, Daniel Cameron had what looked to be a ridiculous, insurmountable lead, 40-8, 40-10, 40-15. And then he slid quite a bit. Emerson was largely the one who pulled this race for the local Fox affiliate. However, here's the truth. The truth is that the consulting class and their usual pollster, and I should pluralize that, but pollsters had been telling everybody that this race was tightening because Kelly Craft had been bombarding Daniel Cameron with negative ads for a month, almost complete total airwaves dominance, and that she was right up on the heels of Daniel Cameron. Because they're running Ron DeSantis' campaign, they got DeSantis to endorse her last minute because they felt that it could at least, if she was 8 points down, maybe it would close it to a few points and the narrative could be, what a weak performance by Trump's candidate. Or they could maybe even pull off an upset, beat Daniel Cameron and say, see, Trump is dead. Trump is not. So much for the inevitability argument. So much for that. The it's over crowd. How do you like that? They want to pretend like this, we're like people like me who are saying what I said last night, which I will quote exactly what I said last night. Nothing less than a total embarrassment for the mega donor and consultant class in Kentucky. They absolutely believe Kelly Craft dominating the airwaves and writing a last-minute DeSantis endorsement was tightening this race. She'll come in third and falling in share. Trump's double-down endorsement helped send Daniel Cameron closer to 50%. Could see it in the Emerson poll. That's a direct quote. Oh, you're reading too much into this. No, I wasn't. They're just lying to you again. And by the way, it's a last-minute endorsement. I've seen last-minute Trump endorsements swing races double digits. I saw Trump once in a special election in Pennsylvania overnight. Send a special election Republican candidate from a double-digit deficit to a less than 1 point loss. I've seen Trump, because I've been on the ass end of his endorsements, I've seen Trump change in 48 hours the dynamic of a multi-candidate gubernatorial primary, jungle primary, and totally blow the leaderboard out of proportion. I once saw Donald Trump change the Florida gubernatorial primary almost 50 points when he endorsed Ron DeSantis, who was down at that time by almost 30 points. And then DeSantis went on to defeat Adam Putnam by 20. So don't give me this last-minute endorsement crap. Early voting was not a lot. It was mostly election day voting. And if you read the Emerson poll, you would see it clear as day. The Trump endorsement was going to affect at least half of Republican primary voters. At least roughly half of them said, I will vote for who Donald Trump backs. The double down endorsement mattered because so many of them did not know that Daniel Cameron had Donald Trump's endorsement. So when late Sunday and Monday, he said, oh, by the way, Daniel Cameron's my guy. He sent Cameron from 33% to nearly 50%. It's right there. This is also something that's important because there are two universes right now with the pollsters. I, for instance, was on the not bearish end of the spectrum, very much in the middle of the spectrum, where our Trump range before the surge was between 43 to 50%, or 43 to 48%, roughly. I'm polling from January 2022, January 23. Our range for DeSantis was about 23% to, and it's just a matter of time from when we got in, to 31%, a high of 31. So we did have a broad spectrum of support at one time, although Trump was clearly favored. And we are in a league now. Well, by the way, I'll welcome Rasmussen because today they have a new poll out that shows Trump absolutely crushing Ron DeSantis nationally. It's 60. Hold up. And by the way, high turnout numbers they're suggesting too in their likely voter model. 62% for Trump, 17% for DeSantis. So Trump is leading DeSantis nationally 62-17. And I'm telling you that when you have a lead like that nationally, states don't exist in a vacuum somewhere. They're not on an island all by themselves doing what, the world isn't doing, whatever they want when the world is doing what it's doing. National polling leads state numbers. That is almost always the case. And here we are. And so now Rasmussen has joined us. And I would, dare I say, really basically the consensus that we have led the trend in, and Emerson, us, Rasmussen, Morning Consults now joining the fold, a slew of others, even left-wing groups, all showing Trump now north of 50%, 60%, 55 to 62%. And why does this matter? Because even though the Emerson poll showed Cameron winning by 17, and he's going to go on and win by 26 here, he blew out the mega donor DeSantis candidate by 30 points. Over 30 points. So what it's telling me is very clear. If you add Quarles and Cameron's support, what do you get? You get the level of support that Emerson has for Trump in Kentucky. And if you look at Kraft's support, what do you have? The level of support roughly that they show for Ron DeSantis. Last night is a strong indication that those of us who are in the Emerson, Rasmussen Morning Consult, and which is amazing. I'm never in the Morning Consult bag, but here we are. It's a primary. Maybe that's why. We are more accurately reflecting the true state of the race, what's going on nationally. And the others who still have Trump in the 40s, maybe a little over 50, are live caller, like I told you before, too educated, too metro, too high participation. Because if you go through these numbers, look at the geography. Daniel Cameron won conservatives overall. Quarles did a good job putting up a fight in some rural areas where you have traditional conservatives, religious conservatives even. Did a good job there. Kraft got killed. You look at the suburbs. Daniel Cameron crushed it. He even won the sweater vest North. The sweater vest Republican North. The eastern part of the state, and here, let me put it up. Let me get more specific, which you should call the Trumpier area, okay? This area, not that long ago, folks, the eastern part of Kentucky was Democratic. It is not anymore. But it was once upon a time coal mining, Democratic labor from coal and more than that. But once upon a time was a Democratic area. In 2018, it was a big indication that Republicans were going to have a really bad night when Kentucky 5 came in, and it wasn't looking good for Republicans. They ended up holding on, but it was single digits when during the Trump era, during Trump's win, they were winning by double digits. These are many of which, and by the way, we have some of that out west. Ancestral voting, Democratic areas in Appalachia, and well, you can even call it that, but in Kentucky, where they once upon a time did not always vote Republican, just because Kentucky now is a red state. You had Daniel Cameron do the best that he did around the state in and around the suburbs of Louisville and Jefferson County. So much for that narrative. He won the sweater vest Republicans. He won the more urban suburbanites, metro suburbanites. He wound up taking Franklin from Quarles, who put up a pretty good performance at some point. Fayette, which is obviously where Lexington is. Daniel Cameron won them. Think about a Lexington Republican, folks. Daniel Cameron carried that area. Kelly Craft got 16% of the vote. All that money later, all that mega donor money later. She's very pretty. She looks like a suburban, white, Southern Republican woman. Upper class. Always looks perfect. Come on. This is the truth. Come on. Will you think that images don't impact Politics, of course they do. Optics matters. Appearance matters. To the mega donor class, Kelly Craft was the better candidate because Kelly Craft looks like the suburbanite in Lexington, in Louisville. The upper crust Republican, except last night they voted for a black Trumper, a black MAGA attorney general. I keep saying this over and over again and people don't want to hear it. MAGA is younger and it's less white. If you can focus on that, you don't have to try to pander to the suburban women that you may or may never win back. Because the truth is, many of those suburban women are not coming back. The ones from 18 on, because in 16 they did vote for Trump. But those who are conservative and not even Republican suburban women that Republicans began to have a problem with, those are the ones that you should really worry about. The 14% who voted against Martha McSally and voted for Kristen Sinema, roughly. And we can go around the country and point out certain areas. But dare I say, the Louisville Republican. The Lexington Republican. And in Pennsylvania, there are tons of them. In Bucks County, in Delaware, and in Montgomery. You're not going to win those who are demographically simply becoming more Democratic anyway. What you can do is make sure that you don't permanently lose the Republican woman who is, some of them are educated, many of them are. And they got wobbly on the Republican Party for a while. But now those women are the ones who are fueling Donald Trump's lead. Those are the ones who just voted for Daniel Cameron. Not exactly what you hear from the media narrative, is it? Biggest losers last night. Number one was the mega donor, the GOP mega donor class. They have to look at this example now and say, damn, it's not just about polls anymore. Here's a real example of what we're in for when we try to fight Trump in the South. Trump is going to win. If Trump also had his primary last night, he'd have beat DeSantis 70-16. It would have been a 50-point route, 50-something point route. 70 plus, frankly. Would have been a total blowout. The Northeast, they're going to have to deal with that as well. I mean, you can continue to cherry pick polls that you want to cherry pick, but it is very strong indication, the results we see last night, that we're right. This universe of pollsters is right. By the way, you may notice that they're all following this universe's trend anyway. They're just not as dramatic, and they're trying to make it look more competitive. Don't forget the media's they're invested in a horse race. Look who partnered. For instance, the other universe would include the NBC Heart Research poll. Well, look at who Heart Research partnered with to do that poll. It's the same firm that's putting out all of those other head-to-head polls. So like when Jim Lee, who knows his state of Pennsylvania better than anybody, comes out and says, sorry, but DeSantis is getting creamed in Pennsylvania. And then less than 24 hours later, that firm puts out a Biden +2 in Minnesota. It's ridiculous. This is why we're going to talk more about the general election polling today, because we're also showing, this universe is also showing the truth, which is the truth is those other polls are, again, too educated, too high interest, mostly live caller, if not all live caller. And the truth is the country isn't familiar enough with Ron DeSantis to have Joe Biden trailing Ron DeSantis at this point. There are just too many people who don't know him. Yes, he's becoming more well-known now, but he still does not have the universal name recognition that Joe Biden and Donald Trump have. And when you poll the bigger universe of voters who, I'm telling you, do not screen them out. You screen them out, thinking that this is going to be like 120 million turnout or something in 24, you're out of your minds. I'll tell you what, I don't know what's going to happen quite yet with the Republican side. It's much more likely it'll be a very high Republican turnout because the overall likelihood is that Trump is the nominee. But in the event he is not the Republican nominee, there is no evidence to suggest that that Republicans are going to be able to match what I see from Democrats right now. We just saw it in Jacksonville. We just saw it in Pennsylvania. There were two special elections. Democrats were saying they could get both. They didn't get both. Republicans wound up holding one. But in the other one, Republicans got smoked. Smoked. And there were some very, very important elections in Bucks County. By the way, the real Republicans did win. Remember the story about the Central Bucks School Board? The real Republicans did advance through the primary. It's crazy how it works in Pennsylvania, folks. They have to beat not only the Democrat, but they have to beat the fake Republicans who are posing as Democrats because you can cross-file, or posing as Republicans, excuse me. They're fake Republicans. They really are liberals posing as Republicans because you can cross-file. In fact, that's how that whole scandal got started. The teacher who is at the center of that scandal, his father was the opponent for somebody named Lee Vlasblom in one of those races. He pretended he was the Republican and knocked on doors and said, I'm the Republican. Ms. Vlasblom is not. She wound up beating him. But then she had to pivot to the general election to explain to people the scam they pulled. And that's why Burgess was so pivotal of a player in the scam about transgender hate crime hoaxes. It was like the Russia hoax meets Jussie Smollett. Well, while they got through, you can clearly see that it is not always clear that Republicans will vote at the same pace or match the rate of turnout that Democrats have. I wonder why they did much better in Kentucky. Wonder what it could be. It's obviously not that hard to figure out, right? So, this is, again, number one loser, mega donors. The top three losers are the mega donors, Ron DeSantis, and the consulting class. Because now the mega donors have to look. I'm going to justify why I have Ron DeSantis as a bigger loser than the consulting class in a second. The mega donors, of which Kelly Craft is one. So obviously we're putting Kelly Craft in with the biggest loser category. But also, those who think they're going to spend $500 million opposing Donald Trump have to look at real results now and say, this is what you're up against. You're down in Florida, you know it. We were even more fair to DeSantis than some of these other ones that are coming out now. You're down in Florida. You're down in Texas. You're going to get creamed in the South. Georgia may be closer than others, but you're down in Georgia, even according to one of the worst polls out there for Trump. The Landmark Communications poll just came out yesterday. Trump is up on DeSantis in Georgia. The Northeast, all those delegate-rich states, New Jersey, Trump is leading with more than 70% of the vote. DeSantis, Siena College. This is not the People's Pundit here. This is the New York Times pollster. Has DeSantis in single digits in New York State. Donald Trump has like a 60-point lead or something. It's ridiculous. Or 50-something. These are delegate-rich areas. He's going to win Arizona. He's going to win the Nevada caucuses. And then what? In the Rust Belt, maybe you get one of them. I don't even know. But Illinois is going to Trump. And now you have to look at real results. And that's why the mega donors are the number one losers today. Despite spending all of this money, Kelly Craft got her handed to her. A more than 30-point spread between her and Daniel Cameron. Trump-endorsed Daniel Cameron beats DeSantis-endorsed mega donor Kelly Craft by more than 30 points. That's the headline. Second biggest loser is Ron DeSantis. because he's being handled by the same people who were around Kelly Craft. Because they all really did believe and were able, or at least listen, whether or not they truly believed that Kelly Craft was on the verge of surging against Daniel Cameron, they got DeSantis to believe it. Just like they got him to believe that Trump would be hurt once he was indicted by Alvin Bragg. Just like they got him to believe that win or lose, Donald Trump is going to win for president again in 2028. Ron DeSantis believes that. I know it to be true. Win or lose. Did you hear what I said? I thought the guy was a lawyer. Brush up on your post-Roosevelt history. So I'm putting Ron DeSantis before the consulting class because the consulting class is still pulling strings here and playing him. So even though they lost last night, they didn't lose as bad as he did. And I tend to believe they did think that Kelly Craft was surging against Daniel Cameron because they really did believe that Josh Mandel was actually slightly ahead of J.D. Vance. They really did believe that Dave McCormick was ahead of Mehmet Oz, because their polling showed that to be the case. Despite his meltdown, I think, on Fox and Friends or whatever it was. Oh, God, People's Pundit doesn't know what he's talking about. Me and John Fredericks were just laughing hysterically. It was so funny to watch. The race was over. He just couldn't admit it. That guy's such a grifter. It must really hurt that this keeps happening to you. You say what you want, mock what you want. And by the way, personal attacks are not the way to win people over. And the problem with the personal attack angle is this anyway. If you are saying that Donald Trump has to go because nobody can't stand his attitude and his personal attacks are just too much, then why are you trying to be like a fake version of the real thing? Like, why are you trying to be a cheap knockoff of the real thing? Because I told you this would happen. You're not going to out-Trump Trump in Trump's lane. All you're going to do is get put in the mega donor consultant class establishment rhino lane, whether you want to or not, even whether it's fair or not. And at this point, it is fair. DeSantis endorsed a mega donor over a young, black, rising star MAGA Republican. You are what you are. I hear Laura got singing True Colors in the other room. You are what you are when you have Paul Ryan whispering in your ear and you're listening to him and you're buddy-buddy. When Jeb Bush supports you, there's a reason. When Karl Rove is advising, there's a reason. So now this is just, we now have an election on the books where that proxy fight is on the record. And I'm intentionally leaving this map up because the visual of it is very important. That's where it is. That's just where that's where it's at. Here we have David Cameron taking a shot at Ron DeSantis. And that's why we're gonna look at the we're gonna take this and pivot to the other race here in a second, which in an effort to cope with their incredibly devastatingly bad night last night, DeSantis people are actually trying to blame the loss of the Jacksonville mayoral race on Donald Trump, who stayed out of the race. And I'm going to tell you why. It's just totally ridiculous. These people are really, I mean, it must be in like large amounts of alcohol every night at this point. I just pray it stays there and it doesn't get into like hard drugs. Trust me. All right, let's listen to Daniel Cameron, who took a shot. Took a shot at DeSantis. He doesn't mention him by name, but he's taking a shot at him, and I'm going to explain to you how and why.
And of course, a big thank you to President Donald J. Trump for his support and his endorsement of this campaign. Let me just say, the Trump culture of winning is alive and well in Kentucky.
All right, the Trump culture of winning. He took a shot at DeSantis there because DeSantis said there was a culture of losing that surrounds Donald Trump. It's a really profound thing for him to have even said because, of course, he would never be governor if it wasn't for Donald Trump. That's just a true, objective fact. Adam Putnam would have defeated him in the Republican primary, and Adam Putnam probably would have comfortably beaten Andrew Gillum. That's the truth. He really had no controversial things behind him. Adam Putnam was liked by, MAGA Republicans. He was liked by traditional Republicans. He was liked by the Republican who would vote for Bill Nelson for senator, yet vote for the Republican at the presidential level still, and even for Congress and everything else. That Republican, the Monroe, kind of older traditionalist Republican. Adam Putnam had no problem with cultural conservatives. Adam Putnam was a kind of consensus, middle of the road kind of candidate. He would have probably beaten Andrew Gillum by about 2 to 4 points. And Ron DeSantis would not have without Donald Trump rallying for him. Laura and I saw it firsthand. We were there. People were not turning out in record numbers for a midterm primary in Florida because they wanted to vote for Ron DeSantis. He was just a benefactor of it. They did so to defend their president because they were afraid that Bill Nelson would vote to convict Donald Trump of any impeachment. That's the truth. So a 3-term senator went down to I would say he was, at that time, Rick Scott was a popular governor. He wasn't for a long time in his tenure until Hurricane Irma. And then when Hurricane Irma came around, it was a superstorm. It was huge, and he was widely viewed to have handled that hurricane marvelously, brilliantly. And he turned around his image in a way that not many politicians can claim they have done. His approval rating went from routinely 40 to 42% to well into the 50s, even the high 50s at one point. I believe we had him at 56. So he was able to beat Bill Nelson not only because of that, but because he ran a brilliant campaign reaching out to non-whites, by the way. But not only that, it was because Republican-based voters were afraid Bill Nelson was the shine had been off of Bill Nelson. It had been worn off. And the image of being a moderate had been worn off. And everyone could see that he was voting in lockstep with Chuck Schumer every step of the way. So they were worried that if Bill Nelson was reelected and Rick Scott was not the senator, that Bill Nelson, when push came to shove, would in fact vote to convict Donald Trump, and they would remove their president from office. That's what they were afraid of. That's why Collier County was at typical midterm levels by 10 a.m. in the morning, and by noon, they were skyrocketing and really midway to 2016. It was ridiculous. Nobody was telling Laura and I in the booth, I'm dying to vote for Ron DeSantis. Nobody. We did pre-polling. We did interviews with people at the booth. Turnout on election day was massive. Massive. So, Laura's yelling at me, telling me commercial time. But that's important to note. And by the way, Ron DeSantis did win while the margin was bigger than it was, and it was called before the disputed Senate race. That's because there were 7 candidates on the ballot for governor. There were only 2 candidates on the ballot for Senate. And in fact, Ron DeSantis never even hit a majority. He won Florida in the high 40s. All right. So it's important to remember that. So that's why we have the biggest losers. Obviously, before we get into it, Laura, because I don't want to come back and do more of this, but the biggest winners last night, obviously the biggest winner was Donald Trump. The second biggest winner was the group of pollsters. It's just true. Because we have a long way to go, and it's clear that the mixed mode is going to outperform here. And then the third biggest winner is the voter, because they got the voters of Kentucky. And I'm going to tell you why. I mean, they got, and I would say MAGA in general, but they got bombarded with a ridiculous amount of money for a gubernatorial primary in a state like Kentucky. And while they were largely decided months before, what happened? There's a lot of parallels to the presidential primary right now. Early leader, huge lead, but the consultants come in, find somebody who can either raise or self-fund, make a fortune off of that candidate, divide the electorate, smear people on their own team, all to just get their ass kicked in the end anyway. It's a preview of what's to come. All right, let's take a break. It's sad. It is sad. Damn right it's sad. Authorities fear extremists are targeting the U.S. power grid. And that's according to Time magazine, not the People's Pundit or Breitbart. And if just 9 key substations were to go down, it would knock out power across the country for up to 18 months. Your life would be frozen at in time the moment the power went off. That's why you need a solar generator. The new Patriot Power Generator 2000X is portable, but it's powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, even your refrigerator. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and get one for 10% off if you use the code TPP10 at checkout. This code is obviously for your first purchase only, but good for anything at the store. But definitely want to use it for a ticket item like Patriot Power Generator 2000X. Again, it's 4patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP10 to get your Patriot Power Generator today. I think I'm going to save, Laura, I think I'm going to save the next one for the next segment. All right. Just because we're rolling along here. All right. What do we want to show next here? Live results up. Things. Really quick, we can just go over this primary poll. Interesting. Again, welcome Rasmussen to the fold. And then I want to talk about our own polling, which I'm going to go over with you. There was just a poll out. It's now the second one to show that, in fact, DeSantis is in the 30s against Biden when you look at the entire electorate. And I think that that's interesting because it's very close to what we have. The only thing is we do have everyone else's share a little higher. I think they got DeSantis at like 33, down to Biden by 10, maybe by 5, excuse me, maybe 38, 33. This early, it's not at all. I'm curious to see what it is, but it's not at all uncommon for that to be the case, especially if that poll was conducted largely online. That's why we like mixed mode. Okay, so it's Biden plus 4, 37, 33, and Trump plus 5, 43, 38. Very, very close to what we're about to show you. Only our shares are higher. All right. And why? Because it's the mode. It's the modes. I'm almost positive if I was to look into that poll, I'd be able to know that out, with a certainty. All right, so let's go to crosstabs. All right, let's look at first Rasmussen. Trump holds massive lead over 2024 GOP primary field, months ahead of the first 2024 primaries. I mean, look, we're getting closer, though. We are getting closer to the silly season here. Former President Donald Trump's leads his would-be challengers for the Republican nomination by a substantial margin. A substantial margin. I have to show you the Everviz graph I'm making right now to show you the size of Trump's lead on a full area graph to give you a visual idea of what a pollster is trying to say when we tell you something is statistically significant or, they use the word substantial there, but what they're trying to say is this is an incredibly difficult lead to overcome. The latest Rasmussen Reports National Telephone and Online Survey, again, mixed mode, finds that 62% of likely Republican voters would vote for Trump in the primaries, while 17% would vote for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. That's almost identical to us, to Emerson, Morning Consult, Reuters came out yesterday, and I mean, they're way out. I mean, they are still out there. They were like Trump 49 or 50, DeSantis 20. The Reuters poll doesn't surprise me. Again, you're going to miss some people if you do one mode, especially during a presidential election cycle. And I think that's really clear. All right. Several other announced or possible 2024 candidates have single-digit support. Pence at 6, that's who we have in third. Haley at 5, we have Haley fallen behind Vivek now. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, 3%, we had him at nothing almost. And businessman Vivek Ramaswamy. We have Vivek at 5 now, so does others. But that's when you're looking at statistical significance. What is the plus or minus of this puppy? Like 3%. So it's not at all uncommon, to see these candidates swapping low single digits like that. 65% of all likely U.S. voters say it's at least somewhat likely they'll vote in next year's Republican primaries, including 52% who say it's very likely they'll vote in the 2024 GOP primaries. This is big. It's big. They have 65%. Just out of curiosity, we have it. We're higher. We're actually higher. Hold on. I'm going to look at it. No, I'm going to see. We are higher, in fact. Hold on. Just out of curiosity. All right. Well, you know what? We'll look at it after. I'll put it in there after and we'll see. 65% say it's somewhat likely. Among those who say it's very likely they'll vote in next year's Republican primary, Trump's lead is somewhat smaller, 53 to 18 for DeSantis, followed by 4% for Pence, 4% for Haley, and 3% for Ramaswamy. I believe we have that as well. Like if you are certain to vote, then that's the strongest lead for Trump. If you're likely to vote or very likely, every pollster is a little bit different, then it's a little bit less. However, when they're saying this, I looked at the crosstabs, a little bit weird, a little bit confusing, but I understand what they did. It's laid out a little bit weird for the layman. That's everybody. Everyone. 996 U.S. likely voters conducted May 11th and May 14th through 15th. The margin of the sampling error is plus or minus 3% with a 95% level of confidence. That's why, by the way, they have conservatives a little bit lower than us. But we'll get there. Among all likely voters, including Democrats and voters not affiliated with any major party, Trump is supported by 37% compared to 14% for DeSantis. That's not, both obviously have fallen, and that's because that includes people who are not eligible to vote in their state's primary or caucus or whatever it may be. We are different, and I want to point this out. I think we did discuss this a little bit last time, but that is why we say how we word it. Okay, which is, hold up. And granted, we already know, because it's voter file sourced, we already know, and so does Rasmussen, by the way, where they are and whether or not they are in fact eligible. And we can actually verify that information. I'll ask voters to self-report, and then we'll go back and we'll look. But in which party primary or caucus for the presidential nomination in your state will you vote next year? Or are you unlikely or ineligible to participate in either? And we were pretty close, or I would say the voters were pretty close. They were honest. For the most part, everything matched up really well here. Republicans are slightly more likely to vote in the primary. 48%, or I would say the share of overall voters, 48% say they're going to be voting in a primary or caucus on the Republican side. 43.5% say they will be on the Democratic side. I do expect Republicans to outvote Democrats, but only slightly, not by as much as you would think, given that Joe Biden is an incumbent president. Why? Because there are challenges, and because there are so many Democrats who don't like Joe Biden, even though they're, thinking that maybe he's the best shot to beat Trump. Still, they're going to hold off and they're going to vote for Biden. They want to vote. So don't be surprised if Joe Biden winds up smashing incumbent records. I would not be surprised at all. Unlikely, ineligible, 8.5%. which is about right. All right. So moving on, see what there. Trump's support among all likely voters with men, 42, and then women voters. Higher with men than women voters. That's all likely voters, though. All likely voters. Men are also somewhat more likely to say they'll vote in the 2024 GOP nominees, GOP primaries. We have that as well. Men, 51.8% of men say they will vote in the Republican primary. Only 40.6% say they will vote in the Democratic primary. 7.5% are unlikely or ineligible to vote in either. Women, 46.1% say they'll vote in the Democratic primary, but 44.5% of women say they'll vote in the Republican primary, and 9.4% say they're unlikely or ineligible to vote in either. But if you're just looking at likely and eligible Republican primary voters, because this, what Rasmussen is giving you right here, is everybody. If you look at just the Republican primary electorate, women are more likely to support Trump than men. And that is true everywhere. Even in the polls that are less bullish for Trump. Trump's lead is being fueled by Republican women. Women, period, actually. It's not even fair to say Republican women, because Trump is leading with moderate women, independent women who say they're eligible and they're likely and they will vote in the Republican primary. He's winning women by a larger margin than he's winning men. This isn't surprising at all to me. 65% say they're likely to vote. Voters older are always more. Trump's advantage is greatest among voters 40 to 64. Absolutely. And again, this is all, I wish they would have taken out simply Republican primary voters, because this is, you're thinking to yourself, how could Trump be leading 62 to 17 if his best vote is only a 28-point margin, 41 to 13? Because again, this is all voters. Not just the Republican primary electorate, but interesting enough, they still have, they do 40 to 64. We do 40 to 54, and then 40 to 49. The 40 to 49 group is Trump's best group with us, with others as well. But if you look by detail, just give me 1 second, and I'm going to show you all this in a second. But Trump's best group, 60s, the age 40 to 49 category, Trump leads DeSantis 66.2 to 15.7. He leads with the 30 to 39, 61.7 to 20.1. So I'm actually going to ask Mark Mitchell, do me a favor, Mark, nest these out with just Republicans. Curious to see what you got. I almost guarantee, I do guarantee, actually, that Trump's above 60 with these age groups, and that's what's pulling him over 60 in your polling. But the truth is, we have Trump over 60 in the ages 30 to 74. 30 to 39, 61.7. 40 to 49, just said 66.2. 50 to 64, 61.1. 65 to 74, 60.9. 75 plus, 58%. And younger voters are less, but his lead is still dominant with them because they're mostly the undecideds. Okay? And they're also, I want to say throwaway votes. There's a lot of throwaway voters with the 18 to 29-year-old group, whether it's 18 to 24, 25 to 29. So Larry Elder has some young support. He's got no old support, but Larry Elder does, in fact. Of the 10 people, 11 technically, who chose Larry Elder, 5 of them were 18 to 24, 4 of them were 25 to 29. All right, so you can clearly see Trump's obviously, got all the other non-white vote. He's winning with whites, but he's got the non-white vote. 69% of whites, 50% of black voters, and 61% of other minorities say they are at least somewhat likely to participate in the Republican primary. Some of that sounds a little high to me. I'll just be honest with you. We have, I'm going to give it to you right now. Whites, 54.4% said they'll vote in the Republican primary, 37.6% say the Democratic nomination. 18.5% of black voters say they'll vote in the Republican primary. That's what we have. 73.7 say that they'll vote in the Democratic. About 40% of Hispanics say they'll vote in the Republican primary. 56% say they'll vote in the Democratic, or like mid 50s. Asians, 34% Republican. American Indian, Alaskan Native, 26% Republican. Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, not so really surprising because of where they come from. 77% said they'll vote in the Republican primary, and 54% of other ethnicity. If you add other Asian and other together, because the samples are so small, that makes a statistically significant sample, that actually you can see it's basically even. 41% say they'll vote in the Republican primary, and 40% say they'll vote in the Democratic primary. So, again, I think Rasmussen's numbers are a bit high here, especially for blacks and other minorities. However, I do think we're looking at a historically high number of non-white Republican primary voters. And let me end this because I'm actually going to show you our own general election polling out of this real soon. And you're going to have to grin and bear it while I'm going to literally make it in front of you, okay? But I do need another weight variable to apply to it because it's primary. So you'll see, I'll show you exactly what we do. It's pretty cool. All right, but here you can see what we got. And actually you can't because it's not up there. Sorry about that. You can see what we got. Blacks 18.5, Hispanics just under 40, Asians about 40, and same thing with Democrats. Still, Hispanics will vote, supposedly. We'll see. We'll see if that changes. However, that still is rather high for Republicans. Republican primary participation is usually very, very white. We're looking at almost 20% non-white if this holds, which would be very interesting. Yeah, Laura, it would, right? Very, very interesting. And with the voting likelihood category before, just to look at who's more likely to vote who, if you look at the Republican nomination, Trump's less voters, they're about the same. DeSantis has it a little high, so we're a little bit more favorable to DeSantis with that. Do I have voting likelihood here, though? However, among those, this is the way it was laid out with Rasmussen. Among those who are certain to vote, Trump is higher, 61 to 18. Likely to vote, Trump's a little bit lower in the 50s. See? So their measurement is very much like ours. And then the unlikely category, which I always show you guys. Certain, totally screened out, but unlikely to vote, I like to show you guys anyway. But why? Because it kind of shows you that if there was a much bigger turnout and these unlikely voters wind up coming out and it shocks people how much turnout there is, it gives you an idea of who's got what in the tank or the reservoir. Right? That's a better, right, Laura? That's a better way to put it. What do they have in reserves? And this is not uncommon in the Trump era to see very Trumpy voters in the less like certain to vote more for Trump than other candidates, but also that likely category, which does come out. They do. It's just that you can't count them every single one of them, but they do. And then that reservoir vote, Trump is usually ahead in the reservoir vote. That's different. That is, let me stop and say, let me point this out. This is important. That's never the case in the pre-Trump, for Republicans in the pre-Trump era. Republicans were always counting their lucky stars that there was low turnout or praying for low turnout. In the Trump era, higher turnout's better. For them, for him and his candidates. Lower turnout is not. As Democrats are voting, they're more certain to vote, especially as they get more educated. And Trump needs, not Trump, but Trump benefits, and Trumpism benefits from the reservoir vote, the uncertain vote, the low propensity vote coming out. And I hope that makes sense. But in the past, that was never the case. You're George W. Bush running against Al Gore. You're praying, you're hoping against hope That higher turnout is not the scenario. Bush v. Kerry, you're praying. Please don't let turnout be that high. Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama. Please be as far away from 08 as possible. In the Trump era, it's high turnout, you pop the champagne cork. Totally different. Totally different. All right, so let's make this. I don't know. I may make a different crosstab just because. Do I have the other the weight variable in here? Okay, I do. So right now, the registered voter file model is applied. Likely would drive it higher. Actually, I was being, again, for all these people who like went berserk. This is, when I say registered voter, I mean it's a wider net. Although we are getting rid of a certain not. It's like a very, very minimal screen. And then you have the likely, which is based on, yeah, Laura just sent me a message that it does show that, Laura, but hang on one second. I'm sorry, distracting me. Between you and David, I can't read both and keep a train of thought. But yeah, basically, the likely is closer to the projected electorate at this time, whereas registered is a bigger universe. All right, so, but it isn't in the traditional sense, and that's the way we've always been. So let's apply. I think I can do this anyway, just doing it like this. I think I could upend the Biden versus Trump, Biden versus DeSantis. Let me see. Edit variable, apply selection to others, rebasing. Nope, there it is. So I should be able to apply to, and applying this weighting to other variables. Yes, I'm going to use it for that one as well. Set weight for this row variable. Weights. I'm changing it to the national likely. Do I want to wait? Set weighting for this row variable. Voting likelihood. Democrat. Nah. It's asking me to. It's choosing that because it's telling me. Obviously, the voting likelihood has a bearing on the likely voter file. And then I started with candidate specific because I want to know what votes but we didn't get there yet. I'm not there yet. We are going to start this, however. We are going to start. I'm going to do it individually. We are going to start showing what its impact. What is the impact when these voters who say, I'm not going to vote if it's not this matchup? We're going to start to show that. Yeah, the hell with it. Let's do it. So it should give me a little crucifix next to it. Indicates variable specific weighting, show details, Biden plus Trump, national likely voter. Nice. All right, now if I was to do it here, is it going to give me the same? Select weighting for this row, category weights, likely. I should have just applied it, but whatever. Let's see what it does. Update it again. Indicates weights, show, and yep, there we go. Indubitably. Let's save it. Proceed. It's just telling you that it's what we're doing impacts these charts. Close the editor. And I should see next to them this little crucifix. All right, so, yep, there we go. See candidate, Biden v. Trump, Biden v. DeSantis. Everything else still has the normal weight. Cool? Cool. So that makes it a Trump plus 7, very close to the ABC Washington Post poll. Very close. And with DeSantis, very close to that other poll. It's a Biden plus 4. All right. Yeah, that's not as bad as the other poll for DeSantis, but it's bad. 13.6% undecided, 13%, 12.7% third party. Here you have less undecided, so that's clearly a benefit to Trump. Biden is doing better against DeSantis. He's losing vote share against Donald Trump, even though you would think name recognition would cause some to back off. And we talked about that on Monday. But overall, and right, man, is that just correct? Let me look. 38.1. Yeah. So he does better. He does a point better against DeSantis. If you pit Joe Biden against DeSantis, he gets 1 point higher vote share than when you pit him against Donald Trump. All right. And Trump gets obviously 10. He's outperforming DeSantis by 10 points. So it's a significant difference. And again, I'm not going to justify the difference here with what we're doing with what other people are doing. It is not even debatable that I was far more accurate than those other pollsters in the last presidential. No, we didn't poll the 2020 primary on the Republican side. There was no point. We did poll the Democratic primary, though. We outperformed the people who are showing a different race. We outperformed them. I'm not going to get into the weeds of who's doing what's right and wrong. Especially this early, you should expect someone who is not universally known to be doing worse against an incumbent president. Come on. If you're not just polling high interest voters and you're polling people of what the electorate really is going to look like at that time. Best guess at that time, of course. So let's look at Trump v. Biden. And we do have race and education here. Oh, I'm dying to see this. You guys ready? I'm looking at this for the first time, the same as you guys, like this. All right? Obviously, I've seen it, but not the way we're doing it right now. Ready? Closing it up. 60-26. Trump leads Biden, some college associate, 55-31. He's even leading him now among 4 years and undergrads. He is losing advanced and postgrad. And I'm telling you right now, the rest of that is going to Biden. It's going to look like 2022. So Trump is doing as well as Republicans did on the House vote, generically, with advanced and postgrad college-educated voters. We had this. I'm not going to second guess whether that's right or not. I'm not, because I second guessed it leading into the midterms. And the truth was, Republicans did well. They got about 40% of that vote, of the highly educated vote, overeducated. Laura, what did we say? What did we say? And I'm just going to be honest. This guy from Oregon said it. And I'm just going to tell you that I'm going to start using it. But I should credit this guy from Oregon, who is actually the son of the dude who found Nike. Oh, right. Thank you, Laura. Some of them are educated beyond their intelligence. Right. And then the 4-year undergrad, Trump's actually winning right now, but they'll probably wind up Biden +2. So I think that, or maybe, Biden plus whatever, but it's within, you got sampling error stuff going on here. What I'm saying is Biden is not going to win it the way he won it in 2020. It's not happening. It looks more like 2016. Some college associate is becoming a huge percentage of the electorate. And Trump is killing it. If we go to let's go to the Epoch Times poll, final Epoch Times poll for 2020. And let's look at how Trump was doing with these age groups in our polling back then. All right. Wow. So Biden had a 10-point lead with the postgrads in our polling. He had a 7-point lead with the college 4 years. Trump had a 1-point lead with some college associate. And high school GED or less was damn near tied, but they were the most undecided group in the final poll. So obviously Trump won them. He just didn't win them by as much as he won them against Hillary Clinton. Wow. Very interesting. Also interesting, by the way, the union vote. So if you were a union member, which Trump did well with private sector unions in 2016, but he lost them, a lot of them, and he lost them by 5, I believe, or something in 2020. Here we have Biden winning them by 4, damn near spot on. But of course it was spot on because our last poll was Biden plus 4, so it's going to be spot on. And then, no, I'm not a union member. Biden was actually winning in our poll by about 5 points. That's interesting. Very interesting. Now, where are you, union? Am I missing it, guys? Am I just not seeing it? It's not in here. Ooh. Sorry about that. Survey demographics. There it is. Why didn't I do that? I missed it. Yeah, let's put it after income. I was thinking of putting it after education, but I nested race and education. So let's put it in income. That's not, I didn't mean in income. I meant after income. It's going to be a pain in the butt, though. There we go. You'll see what I'm always showing you happens to me. See? You're supposed to have this little line right there, but it's becoming very difficult. It doesn't show it all the time. Come on. It's nesting. This is what it does to me, you see? Come on, I want to see this. Yay! Save. You see how there's really no rhyme or reason here? That's what's been happening to me lately. It's updated. I want to know the difference this time. Ooh, let's see. Before we do that, though, hold on. Let's see DeSantis versus Biden. Oh, that was just white working class. Let's look by education overall. I was going to say, wait, before we get that, because I know Biden's probably doing better. Wow! Because of Trump's strength with non-white voters, he's actually doing better with advanced post-college. However, 4-year undergrad is Biden plus 2. That makes more sense to me. It does, like I said. However, high school or less and some college are so pro-Trump when you add them together, not just whites, when you add them together. But again, wait a minute, just for a second here. Okay. So this makes more sense to me because that looks like how much Trump beat. It's more. Trump beat Hillary Clinton with white 4 years by a few points. Here he's beating him by 7 or 8 points among whites only. This is whites only I'm talking about right now. That makes more sense to me. All right. This is below Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton in our polling was 32% with white non-college voters. Biden was 30. I want to say he was doing a lot better than Hillary Clinton. I want to say it was like 38. And I remember people saying that's not enough. It's not enough. And it wasn't. Or at least, guys, come on. We're on the tube, Let's look at how DeSantis is doing. And actually, let's first go to all education. Then we'll look at union. We'll look at DeSantis. And I know I got to take that other break here in a second, Laura. DeSantis is essentially tied with the some college associate vote. That's not good. He's actually losing the high school or less vote. It looks like Trump during 2020. And the 4-year undergrad, he's not doing any better than Trump. He's losing it by 6. And the postgrad, he's losing by 4. White only, he's got to be doing better with them with white only. Not really. He's losing them by 3. He starts to take the college-educated vote, white only, 1 point, not enough. Doing good, decent, and with the high school or less, and some college, the problem is Trump is at like 60% here. And he's got Biden down to what? That's 28. What was Trump? What did Trump have white? 26. So see, Biden does better with white working class against DeSantis than he does against Trump. And the difference is DeSantis's falls and some of those people go to undecided. If Robert Barnes was on with us right now, he would tell you the obvious. Many of those people are not going to vote. If Ron DeSantis is a nominee, they're just not. They won't. They'll disappear into Sean Trendy's thesis again. That's what, well, maybe not all of them. It's not going to be as bad as Romney, or at least I don't think so. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I suspect it's not. I mean, Ron DeSantis is not going to perform as badly as Mitt Romney with that vote. At least I don't think. And again, he may, because they may be pissed that Trump isn't the nominee. And I'm telling you, it's very clear he's not doing good enough with the educated vote against Biden to make up for that. All right, let's compare unions. I do want to do income too, but I think we did that Monday. So if you're a member of a union, Biden leads by 2, much, much closer than it was in 2020. And this is overall. When we get into private union, I'm curious to see what it is. But no union vote, Trump leads by 8. In the public sector union, Biden leads by 14. It's 14 on the dot. Private, Trump has retaken a lead. He's at 49% with private sector union voters. That's very impressive. If you're a household with both, it's Biden plus 10, basically, but very undecided. Let's compare that to DeSantis. Biden leads DeSantis 52-29 among public sector union voters. And of course, if we go back to Trump, we can see that Biden is actually a higher vote share. So is Trump. So it's not simply name recognition. It's not that part. That's not name recognition. I would rather go with Biden. And there are voters who say they would vote for Trump who would not vote for DeSantis. That's just reality. Have you ever seen anybody go through crosstabs like this, by the way? All these critics, I got to laugh my ass off at them. You ever see anybody do this? Is there any other pollster who does this? This is as transparent as it gets, folks. Private sector is 49-33 for Trump, but against DeSantis, it's 37-27. So a lot of that, that's a big chunk of third party. So it's, again, not very clear that there is a name recognition or unfamiliarity with positions kind of situation dynamic going on here. But the fact of the matter is, it is different. And if you're both households, they're damn near split. It is Biden, but they're split, and there's a lot of undecideds. Biden's at 48 already. What is he against Trump again? 38. So DeSantis, against DeSantis, Biden gets 48% of the dual union household. But against Trump, he gets 38%. And while there is a ton of undecided, I most definitely think they would go to Biden. I do. Jeez. That's a big difference. Let's look at income. Blowing me away this time. If you look at income last time, where are you, income? Under 30,000, Biden was leading 46-34. He was leading by 12 points against Donald Trump. Donald Trump has increased his support with under 30,000 by 10 points since 2020. Biden has fallen about 8 points. 30-49, Trump also leads 43-40. Under 39, Biden led in our final poll 50-38. This is what I was trying to tell you. It was not really ever true that Trump was the candidate Like they called him the working class billionaire, but you really had to separate out income with education. You had to separate that. You did not see Trump carrying underclass against Hillary. He did do well with the 30 to 50, but he lost underclass. He lost it to Biden. Here he is now. He is carrying it. 50 to 100,000, he's carrying 44 to 40. They were about even last time. It was Biden plus 1. 100 to 200,000 was even last time. And now it's Trump 49-35. 200,000 or more, you ready? This is going to blow you guys away. It was Biden plus 2. Now it's Biden 52-37. So the Democratic Party has most definitely consolidated their position as the party of the wealthy and the educated beyond your intelligence. Right, Laura? That guy said that, was like, wow, that's perfect. Perfect. Throwing stuff over here. This is a different race than 2020. It's also a different race than 2016, though it is similar in some respects. I may have to close that door. Do you guys hear Roman taking a freaking tantrum out there or no? All right, let's look at Ron DeSantis. Biden leads Ron DeSantis with the underclass, the under 30,000. He leads him 40 to 29. He leads Ron DeSantis with the 30 to 50, which is devastating, just devastating. 39 to 33. He leads Ron DeSantis with the 50 to 100, 40 to 33. He leads, Ron DeSantis leads 100 to 200,000, 40 to 36. And Ron DeSantis leads with 200 or more. Wow, that's interesting to me, isn't it? 46 to 39. Okay, let's go back here. I got a nugget. I found a nugget. This is called a nugget. Oh no, see, Trump is doing better with them now. Never mind. This was Donald Trump's best group in 2016, but he didn't do well with them in 2020. All right, he did better, and he won them, I think. But he lost a lot of support among this group. So never mind. I actually thought that I reversed that in my mind. All right, but so the overeducated and rich voter, we should start nesting by income. Let's do that. Let's nest by income and education. Income, education, income, education. Where are you guys? Sorry, deal with me for a second. Okay, so there's income and education should be before it. Why does it keep going down like that? All right, here's education. Here's race by education. Here's income. Let's do not detail. It's just too. There's not enough for pre-high secondary. Let's do education. There's education income. So it would actually be easier if I just put income before this. If I can. Yes! Victorious! Proceed. Save. Yeah, my response to people who say, oh, yeah, well, I'd rather take this poll. My response is when I see those polls doing this transparent, then I'll care. Cool. All right, so, and actually, I bet you the post-grad, I don't want to show it yet, but I bet you the post-grad 200,000 above is going to be different than the underclass. Or not the underclass, but the less educated. I mean, the less income people. Like, I think Biden's going to be doing better if he has less income people, but they're overeducated. And then he'll do better with the rich who are. We should add like 500,000 or more, something like that. All right. 200,000 or more is Biden. Knew it. So even though 200,000 or more is close, it's close because it's educated 200,000 or more. Highly educated. 200,000 or more high school or less is Trump. Some college 200,000 or more is Trump, 70 to 25. This is what I was talking. I've said this a million times. I'm so glad you saw this with your own eyes. The best voter for Donald Trump is the voter who is doing well financially, but is not overly educated. If you are a pull myself up by the bootstraps, self-made man or woman, you are Donald Trump's best voting group. Even 100 to 200,000 is not a bad living. Some college associate, 56 to 20. Biden leads with the 30 to 50 category only with people who have a post-grad. If you're not doing well and you have a post-grad or you're not making a lot of money, you're a Trump. Although that's a small sampling error. Subgroup sampling error would be very high. So maybe let's not even read that much into it, but it would be very high. Small group. All right. But interesting because the 100 to 200,000 is not a small group. 200 or more, not that small. Small, but not that small. Under 30,000 with some college. See, Biden, his strength remains with people who have the more educated, but you're kind of in the middle. Like, look here, 50 to 100 post-grad. This is very interesting. This number blows me away, though. It is a small group, but I have no doubt that Trump would carry it regardless. That's cool. Did I save this? I think so, right? I did, yeah. And now let's look at DeSantis. So among those who have a high school degree or less but make a lot of money, Joe Biden's carrying that group. See, that's the difference. And we're talking about the same 30 people, roughly, that we interviewed for the Trump versus Biden. So while the sample size is small, what's noteworthy to me is that these are people that still, without a doubt, I mean, we've talked to them before. Biden wins the underclass with no high school education. He wins the 30 to 50 with no high school education. He's basically tied with DeSantis, 50 to 100, but not no high school or less, on all three that I just said. 100 to 200,000 with a high school or less, DeSantis starts to carry. However, DeSantis loses 200,000 or more with a high school degree or less. That's a problem. Again, that's a problem. Same 30 people we interviewed for Biden versus Trump, and they chose Trump. That's a problem. Under 30 with some college or an associate's degree, Biden. And DeSantis is doing well with this $200,000 or more group who has some college associate. He's also doing well. He's not doing as well as Trump. But 65-25 is pretty damn good, you know. Let's see. DeSantis basically carries anyone who's making $100,000 or more and has some associate degree. If you have a $30,000 to $100,000 income, you're basically split between the two because 30 to 50 goes to DeSantis, but 50 to 100 goes to Biden. Under 30, some college associate goes to Biden by a pretty significant amount. All right, so the 4-year undergrad, under 30,000 goes to Biden. 30 to 50 goes to Biden. That's a problem. 50 to 100 goes to Biden. And 100,000 to 200,000 with a 4-year degree goes to DeSantis. All right. Advanced postgrad, under 30,000 goes to DeSantis. Not as much as by Trump, but smaller. 30 to 50,000 goes to Biden. This is a problem because there are a lot of voters here. In this category to boot, period, there are a lot of votes. It doesn't matter whether it's advanced. I'm talking about in totality. So DeSantis's relative weakness versus Trump with the $30,000 to $200,000 income range across education demographics that's a problem. There are a lot of these voters. 42 to 39, Biden over DeSantis with the 50 to 100,000. The 50 to 100,000 generally is the core of the Republican Party. 100 to 200 is when DeSantis starts to do well. Yeah, that's not good. Nesting is when, that's a great, worship Jesus. That's a great question, worship Jesus. And I'm glad Laura interrupted me to answer it. So nesting is when you, okay, for instance, let me put it like this. You can look at Trump versus DeSantis among different demographics. All right. So the row is generally the question. The column is generally a different demographic, although you can swap both. Each individual one, for instance, education, you can look at alone. And you're just going to look at how DeSantis is doing versus Biden in just by the demographic education alone. So whether they have a high school or degree or a high school diploma or less, whether they have a 2-year degree or some college, a 4-year degree, they're an undergrad, or advanced degrees beyond 4-year postgraduate degrees. Then you can also, though, look at these people a little bit deeper. More information. Maybe I want to also look at men and women who have a high school degree or less. And I want to compare men and women to people who have an advanced or post-grad, because I want to know, is it women? So Biden carries the post-grad demographic. Is it women doing it or is it men doing it? So I can nest those variables together and I can separate them out. So nesting is when you separate these demographic categories by another demographic. So I'm choosing to look not just at the entire demographic, but I want to know specifically, what about men who have a post-grad degree? What about women who have a post-grad degree? And here I'm simply doing that. I'm just doing it by income. So I'm not just looking anymore at who has a high school degree or less. I'm looking at who has a high school degree or less and makes $200,000 or more a year. And then you can nest. So you're basically nesting education, or really you're nesting income with education. That's the proper way to say it, because education is the top line demographic, and you're nesting another demographic underneath to be able to separate them out. That's a really good question. And by the way, one of the most common forms of, or one of the most common nested variables that you hear from the media is race and education. They just don't say it like that. They say, so-and-so, Trump is leading with white working class voters by this much. And what they mean by that is simply that they took race, white specifically, and they nested education underneath race. And from that, they look specifically at whites only who have a high school degree or less. All right. And 42 to 29, 60 to 26. So you can see major difference in the performance between Trump and DeSantis among white working class, because they're just not telling you what that means, is that it's white voters, education nested below it, nested with race. You can just look at whites specifically who also have a high school education. I can add other races here. Nesting gets very complicated. And some of these, frankly, don't really have huge sample sizes, so I didn't. But everybody, like I said, cares about. And you can, looking at the crosstab, folks, you can click on this and you can choose to go through it if you want. That's the media's obsession, the white working class and educated women. So they're nesting gender. Again, I'm doing it backwards. They're nesting education with gender. That's a great question. Does that answer it for you? I know it's kind of complicated, but what it really, to make it as simple as I can make it, is that you are looking at one demographic, you nest another demographic to see specifically how it may be different. And gender is a great way to think about it, because there's only two, you're male or you're female. So if you're looking at area, right? And we have that nested right now, actually. And I could show you that. If you're looking at area. The suburban woman, the coveted suburban woman we hear about all the time. Ah, crap, I didn't do it. But you could take area and you could nest it. You can nest gender underneath it. And what it's going to tell you is, okay, Biden leads in urban America in the cities, right? But what about men in the cities versus women in the cities? Same thing with the suburbs. We hear about suburban women all the time. When they're releasing that demographic, they're nesting gender with area or below area, really.
He said he gets it.
Get it? Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. To narrow down a certain type of voter, Laura. Yours, like, if you want to jump in and make it simple for me, Laura, go ahead. Yeah, the point is to narrow down this.
He overcomplicates it a lot. So
I'm just trying to explain the technical part of it without being technical and snobbish.
Yeah, so really what it is this is great for campaigns because then they get to see where their trouble areas are. So, it's really narrowing down a specific voter. Excuse me, sorry, somebody's calling me out of nowhere. But nonetheless, that's what it does. And it helps you figure out who you need to speak more to as well.
Thank you, Laura. Peace out, people. Who keeps calling? My God.
Very rude.
You know what really, I got to be honest, Laura, do you know what bothers me? Everybody and their mother knows we're doing the show right now. And while you and I talked about a shortened show because I'm exhausted and I've been up all night, we told nobody about that. So they don't know. And I'm not sure, even if we do make it a little bit shorter, as it turns out, we didn't make it that much shorter, did we? Because it's already 1:40. Dan, great question. How is high turnout such a good thing when it's a big reason Trump lost in 20? I agree he can turn them out better than anyone on our side, but do you not worry about how he turns out Dems versus him? They're turning it out anyway, Dan. I would just say that first, point blank. They're turning them out anyway. Look at 2018. Look at 2022. They're turning out anyway. Look at Central Bucks last night. Every single one of our candidates got through. I'm very proud of that. However, Democrats are going to vote. They voted heavily. So the only question is not whether so like what they're doing, I would argue they're trying to scare you by saying Trump turns out Democrats at a higher rate. They're turning out. That's going to happen. The only question is whether somebody can turn out those voters better than Trump. And I'm on YouTube, so I'm trying to be a little bit careful, but I don't think that's a big reason he lost in 20. I don't. I think that my thesis on the seasick voter is the real reason compared with election, as Robert calls it, election fortification. All right. I think that's also a big reason. But it's that combined with my thesis on the seasick voter, which is that Trump is not a very good, he's part of being president is being a consoler in chief. He's very good at that in the event of like mass shootings, terror attacks, financial crisis. Even during the pandemic, he was an excellent consoler. But he's not good when the people are manufacturing crises, which is a good segue into the Durham report. And I'll go ahead real quick and I'll save this so you guys can check out the crosstabs when you want. All right. They're up there. They're live. Let me just go ahead and save it one last time just to make sure. All right. So you can check that out when you want, because I want to show you guys something different anyway in a second. But do I even get into the cognitive bias thing, or do I wait for Mike Davis and Daniel Street to come on and talk about it? That's a good question. Maybe we'll wait for that and we'll just talk in general about how I got on the Stasi list, which I want to talk about. I'm trying to be careful with YouTube here. Trump, it was not good when they were creating these crises of like, and I equated it to the boat rocking. They're constantly rocking the boat, and he was a disruptor and an agent of change. So you should have expected boat rocking. And I think a lot of Americans who voted for Trump in 16, and then there are people who voted for Trump in 16 but voted for Biden in 20. That's true. They weren't anticipating, I guess, or maybe they didn't know what they were voting for. Change is never quiet. It's never calm. And the boat's rocking and the sea is shaking and you're getting nauseous and you're just sick of it. And you're nauseous over it. You're just sick of it. It's constant. You had to hold their head over the side of the boat while they're vomiting, and console them. And Trump didn't do that. He needed to say, they're doing this because we're taking the power away from them. We're making real change. And he would say that much sometimes, but what he wouldn't say is show a little humility and say, this is the way it was always going to be. If you want real change, it's always going to be like this. Hang in there with me. I'm in there for you. Hang in here with me, because there's the storm's going to calm. We're going to win. We're going to get the smoother waters. It's going to be smooth sailing, and the horizon is going to be gorgeous, for you and your children for years to come. He never did that. He was, basically the kind of guy who would say, of course the boat is rocking. Because I'm killing it over here. Stop whining. Stop puking. Shut up. Like, that's the way Trump was. And I'm an A-type personality, so I get it. I can't stand repeating myself. I can't stand whiners. I can't stand weak people. I can't stand quitters. I've been through so much in my life. I'm an A-type personality. Even when it comes to things like drug addiction, which I know personally about, I still, because I have been through it, I don't have the patience that I wish I had. I've gotten better, but I don't have the patience that I wish I've had, which is more like people who were there to be strong for me and to help me. I really wish I did. I don't have the patience. So I get where Trump is coming from. I work on it though. He doesn't. You know what I mean? And when you're the president of the United States, you're more than president of all your group of people. You really do have to try to be president for everybody. And there were people who supported him, maybe not really understanding what was coming or what it would mean. And to that end, it was kind of incumbent on you to make them feel secure and to make them feel more stable, and you got to rock the boat when you got to rock the boat. If the boat's not rocking, nothing's changing. So my first reaction is, what did you expect? Cowards? Like, that's who I am. You want to go back to fake change like Barack Obama? Like, that's not real change. If Obama was a real change agent, if there was any hope of real change, if there was any real hope of real change, the status quo would have flipped out like they did against Donald Trump. They would have fought him tooth and nail against everything. They didn't. He was a ball player. And it became real clear, real quick, that there was no real hope of any real change. But you have to explain that to people. The normies. The suburban women who just want to take their daughters to dance class and just want to take their kids to soccer practice and, don't like that crap. They just don't. And that's sad, because it tells you America just doesn't have the heart it once had. But I think it's in there. It just has to be spoken to. And he didn't do it. He wasn't very good at it at all. Not even wasn't very good at it. He didn't do it at all. And there were people telling us, God, I disapprove. I'm going to vote for Biden. And it's like, well, how about the job on the economy? Yo, he's doing great on the economy. What about foreign policy? Fantastic. Immigration, good job. And I'm like, well, then what is the problem? And that was the problem to many of these people. All right, let's look at something real quick. Look, Mom, aren't you proud of your boy? Here is the top promoter, 10,000 people on a censorship list. Obviously, they're saying Twitter and others are going to pretend they didn't operate based on the list. This is a Democrat put together list. Apparently, they funneled to the FBI and to Twitter of dangerous people who tell you things about politics you shouldn't know, voter fraud being a main part of it. But it's not just that. This was a promoter list. You can see Jenna Ellis on it. By the way, Jenna Ellis is on Team DeSantis right now because that's what it took for her to save her bar or license from the bar. Oops. Did I say that out loud? Oops. I love Steve. He's a nice guy. And so, look, even Barnes likes him too, even though he talks about him a lot about this, but it's true. So you have people on this list who are now on the DeSantis train. Here he is. Who say, it wasn't election fortification. It was Donald Trump. And if we just move on to Ron DeSantis, there won't be election fortification and they won't come out. Very much goes to what John was saying before. There are people, it's like John, or Dan, excuse me. And Dan, these are where a lot of this narrative is coming from. But the fact is, here he is right here on the list because he knew full well what happened after. All right. Anyway, who's that? There I am. Look, Mom, I made the social Stasi hit list. Aren't you proud of your son? Here's the thing. They're going to claim that this wasn't a working list, but obviously it was because I, in fact, was eradicated in a moment. In a moment. They took out People's Pundit Daily. It's still out to this day. Big Data Poll, they took out. They took out Laura. They took out me. If it wasn't for Tucker Carlson, I would still be suspended on Twitter today. Big Data Poll would still be suspended on Twitter today. Laura is still suspended on Twitter today. And People's Pundit Daily, which was, go to it right now. It's a data journalism website. There's nothing on it like that. Never been fact checked. It talked about data journalism and mostly, I think, in the final 2 years, 70% of our content was economic because it was covering every single economic indicator that is of note on the economic calendar. And we tracked them. Vaporized. If it wasn't for Tucker shaming them for that, we'd be gone. Still. To this day. Laura's still off. She's got another one, but she's still off. They have not reinstated her account. We never published the findings from Michigan, from Kentucky, because we wanted to look at battleground states and other states that weren't really contested to see if there were any patterns that were generally uniform. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, we did some in, Kentucky, Delaware, right? On and on. We never published any of those findings about fortification on that website. Never. They just were afraid we were going to. So, bam! Obliterated. In truth, anyway, thank you, James O'Keefe, when you worked for the once good institution of Project Veritas, who threw you to the wolves because they're cowards. And nobody's going to care about what they're doing now. Everyone's going to care about O'Keefe Media Group. If it wasn't for James O'Keefe, we already knew we were on the map because James O'Keefe had a whistleblower from Google. And he said point blank that what the real original sin and why they banned us from searches, but they didn't tell us, and we were still partners in Google News and everything. But it was because we were more accurate with the election, and we offered an alternative take to 538. That was our sin. All right, real quick, before we do our really quick last-minute segment talking about this more, let me tell you about a great offer from our good friends at Jam and Bean, jamandbean.com. Patriot-owned, artisan, it is an art form of coffee roasting. So whether, guys, you're like me, where you really like to get freshly and well-roasted beans, grind them yourself, brew them yourself, or if you do that when you have time, or sometimes you don't, and you need to grab a K-cup, and you want a delicious, full-bodied K-cup, if maybe even in a medium roast, they are the only company who makes a true medium, full-bodied K-cup. You can get it at Jam and Bean. Delicious popcorn, whatever it may be, on your first subscription. Sign up for a new subscription right now, and you will get, if you enter the promo code I'm about to give you, TPP40 at checkout, you will get 40% off that initial subscription. Plus, you'll still get 10% off from the People's Pundit discount every month when they renew. So again, let me just say this again because I know it's too good to be true. TPP40 at checkout will get you 40% off your initial subscription when you sign up for a new subscription, and you will still get 10% off every month when the subscription renews. Don't miss out on it. I don't know how much longer it's going to be up there for. Hopefully it is for a while, but I don't know. All right. So again, last time, jamandbean.com, promo code TPP40. All right. Before we get going here, let me just tell you, because it does, I forgot actually about this, Laura. I have an industry conference call with the telecommunications industry, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, to talk about. I can't believe other pollsters don't want to do this. There is a effort to regulate spam, and if pollsters are not part of this conversation with the telecommunications, the carriers right now, which we have been for over a year, if they don't become more active in this, stop scamming their clients when it comes to things like peer-to-peer texting, you're not getting your text through and you're charging your clients a fortune. If you do not become part of this, they're going to go to the government. And if you think that they have raised the rates and polling is more expensive now, wait till how expensive it's going to be when the government slaps regulations on our asses. And then we're going to have serious problems. So I actually forgot. I just got the reminder now. It's a virtual thing, but it's at 2:00. So I am going to end it a few minutes early. But at 2:30, I'll be on Charlie Kirk, so don't miss it. All right? We'll talk about Kentucky more. We'll talk about what it means for the Republican primary. Charlie Kirk is all over it, man. He gets it. He's one of these guys who actually get it. You waste this money right now, you fools. Ronna McDaniel tried to claim that the RNC was signing people up for the permanent absentee ballot list. I'm not going to let her get away with it. We'll talk about it on Charlie Kirk. That's 2:30. Don't miss it. Jeremy, interview with Jeremy's out. I did tweet it. I tweeted part of it. All right. But Laura, send out the links when we can, because that interview with Jeremy was fantastic. And it got picked up by Human Events and the National Pulse. All right. Talking about the Electoral College difference. But it's a fantastic show. I always enjoy speaking with Jeremy, and it's a good length, so you can get into a lot more detail. All right. With that in mind, don't forget, guys, to support the Public Polling Project far and wide. If you can, share it with like-minded friends, contribute to it. And again, sharing it is very helpful. All right. But what else am I missing? I think that's it. Promo codes are in the description. Book club at 3 p.m. We didn't do one for Mother's Day, so don't worry about it. That's Sunday, though, so I will remind you about that. The best place, of course, to follow me, we're everywhere, but the best place, of course, to follow me is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. Again, peoplespundit.locals.com. Become a member first if you want. If you like it, become a supporter. Like and share the video, whether you're watching on Rumble, Getter, YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, sign up to the channel, subscribe. But again, the most important thing to do right now is to go to Locals and sign up. peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. All the best, folks. I will see you on Friday, and we'll talk a lot more about the Durham report. I just started to touch it. But hopefully we have some guests who can help us sift through the 300 and something pages that detail a coup disguised as cognitive bias, and nobody's going to be punished. Plus more polling. All right, guys. Have a good day. Have a safe day. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.
Deuces.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit.